Hi guys, and welcome back to the Scrumpy Kiwi with me, the Scrumpy Kiwi. And this is the first video I'm going to be doing where I actually show you guys what it is that I've been working on. So in the last video, I think I mentioned that I am trying to get my Death Guard army painted, basically, because I've had them sat around now for 2 years maybe, and I've not really done anything with them, so I needed to start. And I am actually going to be competing in a tournament in February the 19th, I think, and it's 1,000 points per army, and I'm going to be playing my Death Guard because it would be a nice opportunity to actually play them at all. I've never actually got them on the field and seen what they're like, and so this is a sort of a motivator, I guess. The tournament's going to be the motivation I need to actually get them done and tabletop ready, and so I'm really looking forward to it. So the first thing that I wanted to get done was a squad. Just a standard squad of Plague Marines, which is what you can see here, and I knew from the get-go that I didn't want to just do the standard Death Guard paint scheme, the one that most people think of when they think of Death Guard, which is, of course, the green colouring. I've got nothing against it, but I just wanted to do something a little bit different. And I came up sort of with my own lore as to who my warband of Death Guard was going to be. And they were cool. I decided on a name that I think invokes a sort of a bit of mystery about them. It kind of gave you a bit of a flavour of what they may be like, and also a bit of a descriptor on what they would look like, what it was they sort of wanted to do, what it was they were hoping to spread, because we all know that Death Guard like spreading disease and pestilence wherever they go. So my guys were called the Pilgrims of Rust, and just by the name alone, you get the idea that they are travellers, which is what the Pilgrims part was supposed to be. And then, of course, with the rust, that they like to see the erosion, the decay of metal. So, cybernetics, vehicles, industry. They love to watch that all fall apart from the weapons they use, and just from them being around. So I knew that meant that the paint scheme needed to be rusty, needed to be that sort of grimy, earthy colours that you sort of expect to see when metal starts to rust away and erode. So I have actually already 3 painted Death Guard models, which were the tester. It was what I knew I couldn't just wing it. I needed to actually experiment and find what would work best, how I would do this, how I would find an easily replicatable paint scheme that would have the desired effect. And I was pretty quick actually at finding it. So what I started with was just a primer, which is just your standard Corvus Black. I usually use Abaddon Black, but for some reason I had a pot of Corvus Black, and I found with Corvus Black it's a little bit lighter than your usual black. If I'm honest, it kind of looks, when it dries, a bit like a very dark grey, and I find that when I come to then adding the next layers of paint, it's a lot easier to see the details of the model. I find with the Abaddon Black it kind of steals the details from my own eye, which makes it harder to distinguish between different things that I'm painting. So that was a really happy find. So I've been using that. I use that now almost on everything. After that, I then went for the Army Painters Weapon Bronze. So again, just paint all over all of the metal areas. And to begin with, I was like, oh no, what have I done? Because it does look quite bright, but I knew I needed to sort of stay the course and commit to it, because there were going to be layers going on top of it. Excuse me, I just did a little burp. So with that done, the model was all painted up lovely in weapon bronze. I then had a choice, which would have been to put a wash, a technical over the top of that, or I could just do some of the small other details. So I did some of the small other details as well, and that would be things like any materials like tabards, loincloths, any sort of bones, protrusions, any tentacles or other organic matter sort of creeping out. And so for those, I was using Bugman's Glow, Rakarth Flesh, because I find it has a very nice pallid colour, which is what I want for the flesh. I want it to sort of look kind of mottled and dead and decaying. And also, I always find you can't go wrong with just a little bit of Ceramite White. I apologise, that's a little bit out of focus. Why won't that focus? Everything else seemed to. Is that going? That's not too bad. You get the idea. You see what I'm working with. So once all my details were done, all of the details were done, sorry. Next was the part which I was most concerned about, because it was going to be, if I can find it, I've got it all set out. For some reason, I can't find it. There it is. Typhus Corrosion. Now, Typhus Corrosion is a really, really nice paint because there's little bits of matter in there which give it a very rough texture once it dries. And I knew I needed that. I needed it to replicate that rust-like effect. And the key is to cover your model in it, cover all of the metal areas of the model, but to also be very wary that you're not putting too much on. You don't want to hide any of the details that are there. So make sure you've perhaps got a sponge or a tissue to hand and then just dab over it afterwards. You're not going to lose any of that texture, but you are going to stop it from pooling in any areas, any recesses, because you don't want that. You still want to have that detail there. Once that's all nice and dried, then afterwards, you have a choice. You could go straight onto putting Warpainter's Dry Rust, a dry brush of that over the top. This is a lovely paint, absolutely wonderful paint. Again, looks very orange, but when you put it on, when it dries, it's amazing. It really gives that orangey rust effect that is what I was looking for. So that's such a happy find for me. So you could do that and then put over the top Agrax Earthshade Gloss, or you could do vice versa, and that's what I did. I went vice versa, so I did the Agrax Earthshade first gloss. And the reason I like the gloss is because when it goes over, everything it goes over, it does leave of course that gloss sheen, but I felt that it worked because it gave the models a very sort of slimy, wet look, which I kind of liked. I like the idea that they are going to be kind of humid and sort of sickly warm as they're stomping around the place. But of course we're going to be going over that gloss with other colours, which will be the Dry Rust, and that is going to take that gloss down a bit, which it does need. It does need to sort of lose a bit of the shine. And before the Dry Rust, another thing I would do is just put a little bit of Leadbelcher on there, just a dry brush of that. Again, it sort of gives the idea that some of the metal has been chipped away. Some of those layers of rust have been chipped away to reveal the layers of metal that are a bit more pristine that are underneath. For me, it was all about just trying to make these guys look really weathered. Like their armor it's just more. It's not really actual armor. It's more just layers of rust that have slowly eaten away at them over the centuries, the millennia that they've been fighting. And these guys, there is a part of them underneath that is still, there's still that sort of vestige of the purity that they once had, but it's just been completely caked over with this eroding matter. And yeah, that was sort of the kind of the formula that I came up with. And I felt really happy with that, and I was pleased with how it turned out. And then once all of that had dried and all of it was done, the next was to add, of course, my favourite, which is the technical paint, Nurgle's Rot, which essentially is just it's just bogies. That's basically what it is. It looks like slime. It is slime, and it's great. You just put it wherever you want, which on these models is in the recesses, in sort of the gaps and the rents and the splits in the armour, all those places that you would not want to get close to because you know that it's going to lead into the core of these things, these rotting space marines, and it's where all of that, just that putrid foulness is leaking out and running down the armor and just eating away at this already eroding armor. That's what I wanted. And once all that's done, once all of that is lovely and dry, the final touch would be to add onto the base itself some technical, which is Stirland Battlemire. And I love this because you can just get yourself a cocktail stick or a sculpting tool, or even an old paintbrush, and just dab it on in some fairly generous sort of lumps, and then just smooth it out, and you get this really nice churned up battlefield look. If once it dries, if you want to perhaps dry brush over something over the top, perhaps a lighter brown, go for it. I don't personally. I'm happy for that very wet, muddy look, as if the ground's been churned up by armies marching across it and artillery fire and just all these, all the things you'd expect from a battlefield. And then I'll go and add some little pools of Nurgle's Rot just to look like all this pus is just dripping and pooling on the ground as these guys march over it. And so that's how I get them done. That's how I get them painted up. And then if we just try and bring them a little bit closer to the camera, you can see, hopefully, what I'm talking about. I do apologise if the camera keeps dropping out of focus. I'm just learning sort of the basics. So this is the champion, and as you can see, the pus is sort of leaking out of all of the pipes and all of the splits in his armour, the bits where the armour's even warping into faces, and there's that horrible maw in his stomach, which I absolutely wanted stuff to leak out of. The cape on the back is, I should have said actually, is Vallejo's Air model Hull Red. Yes, Hull Red. I've got the paint to hand. And that's that's the cape. And then I just did a dry brush of Rakarth flesh over it, and it just gives that sort of very old, tattered, weird, worn look. And you've got the sort of colours changing there as on the areas where it would have faded most from just being moth-eaten and weather-beaten. So that's the champion, aspiring champion. I can't remember what they call him. Plague Sergeant. That's what it's called. Goodness me, jeez. You can tell I don't use a script. So next we have this chap with the Plague Spewer, I think it's called. And this guy, again, I knew it was going to be fun because actually modelled onto the figure itself are all these sort of drips of just God only knows. And so that was a very easy reference for where to actually add Nurgle's Rot later on. And I like in the actual weapon itself, that hole where there's just, it sort of looks like it's going all the way through the weapon and just everything's dripping out. And here we go, just spin it around, and there's that tube again, sort of covered in all the grossness. And I find when I'm putting Nurgle's Rot on these models, not to be too cliche, but less is more. And so I try to do very thin streaks, not to go too heavy. And if I do go too heavy by accident, then I'll perhaps go a little bit lighter in other places. This model again is one of my favourites because it's got all these little maggots sort of wriggling their way out of his armour, and they're fun. They were fun to make sure I caught when I was highlighting with Rakarth and white paints, and then afterwards I made sure I gave him just a little touch of this Nurgle's Rot because it's really nice. I like the way it sort of keeps that. It's got this sort of wet look to it, so it looks like it is actual slime in the end. So here we go, and then on the back this really amazing rusted plague sword, which I absolutely wanted to make sure I got. And so I love the armour. I love all the details on this. I love the plate armour look. It just makes them look just like they're absolute units. And this backpack as well, I should say, the power pack. I love the way that the vents here either side are sort of mutating into actual flesh. I apologise, I'm moving it around so much. And with those, I really tried to get the rust colour sort of moving into flesh colour. Well, I say flesh, like diseased flesh. and it was a bit tricky, but I'm glad how it has sort of worked out. So yeah, that's that one. I'm trying to be quick. I have noticed that this video is going to be like 15 minutes long, so I apologise, but hopefully you guys are happy to stick with it. And then we've got this big boy here. I think this is the heavy plague spewer. I can't remember the names properly. I do apologise, but this one I love just because of how the fact that he's got that really nice spiky the armor piece on his leg just makes him look like an absolute beast. And the fact he's just not even charging, just stomping forward with this massive weapon, and then all the tubes in the back, just with this awesome power pack that's also acting as like a pump for this horrendous weapon that's going to just spray people with all sorts. There we go. Try and get that in focus. There we go. Nah, it's not really in focus, but yeah, this armor plate as well that's sort of morphing into some horrific creature. There we go. And that tongue wrapped around the arm. It's just little details like this. I think I love the old Plague Marine models. I really do. I actually, I got some of them back in the day, very soon after they came out. But these models just add that next layer of detail. I'm sort of nearly coming to the end now. I'll try and wrap this up quickly. And so yeah, here's this boy as well. Now this is my, as you can tell, sort of close combat guy, and he's got this gnarly axe and mace here. And again, this guy was fun just because, again, the weapons he had, it wasn't just your standard bolter and what have you. He had actual close combat weapons. I love that it's deciding now is about the time to go out of focus. Please go back into focus. Hey, there we go. Almost. Well, you can see, there we go. So you can see this shoulder pad again is also morphing into a grinning face, and I wanted to make sure like the tongue got some slime on it, because you got it, haven't you? And then there we go on the leg there, that dagger being sort of swaddled up by the tentacle. Again, I like this model. Not my favourite model, but I do like it. When it comes to my favourite model, I think it may be this one. Everything about this model. I love the helmet, again that sort of maw on the chest, with that big maggot just crawling back in. This shoulder pad I love. Just it's like, why? How is that practical at all? But it's just awesome, just with those big old spikes. The bolter as well. The bolter for this arm, this isn't actually the bolter that is meant to be held in this hand. So I cut the hand off of another model, and then replaced the bolter that was on this arm with this one. Don't think I even said that close to properly, but here you go. There you go. Just because I like the drum magazine, I thought it looked beefier, and the little grub as well on the end that's sort of become the sight, and the little pustules on the bolter itself. Yeah, I like this one. And so yeah, and then on the back, this power pack, which has now sort of got a very steampunk aesthetic. I just really like that. It just looks awesome. So yeah, as you can hopefully see, the orange is also just creeping through on some things. Again, I didn't want it to be too much. I wanted it to look natural, as natural as these guys can look. And then this is my last guy as well. He's got this awesome flail, and he's actually he's got more sort of bony growths breaking through on his armor. This shoulder pad is actually one of just a Chaos Space Marine shoulder pad, but it's one of the Nurgle ones that you get. So I switched it over because I liked a little callback to the old edition Chaos Space Marines. And then the bells all on his armor, and then there on the stump of this head on his hip, I wanted to just do ooze leaking out. And this tentacle coming out the back here, I can only imagine where that's actually coming from. So I had to make sure that that was as gross as could be. And yeah, there we go. So yeah, that is the first squad of Plague Marines, and hopefully not the last. Well, definitely not the last. But as far as this 1,000-point army goes, I'm not sure, if I'm honest. I'm working on a Rhino, which I'm not going to show you yet because it's just not ready. It's a rescue piece that I was given many years ago, and I am turning it from what it was, which is a very banged up Rhino, into a very deliberately banged up Death Guard Rhino. and that should hopefully be something quite exciting because it's probably one of my most ambitious conversions. So there's a lot of modeling that I've put into it to make it look like all these organic growths are appearing all over it, as well as to make it look like it's been patched up on the battlefield by a bunch of guys who, as you can tell just looking at these guys, don't really care about what they look like. So hopefully that'll be something that you guys actually want to see. Apologies for a 20-minute video. I didn't realize looking at 7 guys was going to take that long, and I will try and get another video out as soon as possible. Maybe tomorrow, who knows? Like I say, I'm not going to set dates, but I will try and be a bit more efficient. So thank you guys for watching. If you like what you see and you want to see more potentially, then subscribe, leave a comment, all that cliche business that everyone always says. I don't know what it does, but if it helps or if it's what everyone does, then yeah, go for it. I don't mind. As long as you guys like what you see, that's all that I care about. So take it easy guys, stay safe, and I will see you next time on the Scrumpy Kiwi. Bye bye.